Should someone start attending a church if he or she doesn't believe in God?
Well, intriguing question, and my answer is yes, they should absolutely, but never do that.
I appreciate that firm response, but that doesn't really help too much. Welcome to Word for the Week, episode 22, season 3. Today, we have another question commonly asked of Christians.
Well, you know, Kath, the National Back to Church Sunday is coming up next month, so we're kind of in the groove with this one, dealing with these common questions asked of Christians. A lot of them deal directly with church, so guess what?
Today our question deals with church.
That is correct. There's excellent deduction powers going on there, my dear.
Yes, well, I'd like to take credit, but I actually read the transcript in advance, I have to say. But this question is quite intriguing.
Yeah, it really is. And tell us, what is this intriguing question?
Okay. Should someone start attending a church if he or she doesn't believe in God?
Should someone be attending a church if they don't yet or don't at all believe in God?
Right.
Well, intriguing question. And my answer is yes, they should absolutely, but never do that.
I appreciate that firm response, but that doesn't really help too much. How about we take your answer in parts and see what that means?
Okay, let's do that.
Let's start with you absolutely should.
Okay, and we've done this thing before with language, but let's go back to the original word use for church in Scripture, which actually isn't the word church, even though in the English Bible it is the word church, but it's not. And it's because there was another term that was used there. Do you remember?
If I remember correctly, it was ecclesia.
Ecclesia is the term. Good memory. Kudos to your brain. And the word means a meeting or a gathering of the called out ones. Mm-hmm. And it was actually a word borrowed from the local Greek government system. The villages would have a council of elected citizens, and it was their responsibility in that year or whatever that should they be called out, that they would gather together for the purpose of resolving whatever issue was at hand.
And as I understand it, the new Christian community found the term fit so well that they adopted it.
Right. In fact, the term became so integrated in the Christian community that it actually outlived the use in the secular Greek culture.
Right.
And in Latin-based languages, which English is really not, it's Germanic.
Mm-hmm.
I was older when I found that out. I was quite surprised I knew so little. But anyway,
I find that every day more and more.
More and more. The Latin-based languages, the word lives on, actually. And in the French, église. In the Spanish, which I got wrong and you got right, what is it in Spanish?
Iglesia.
Iglesia, which obviously those words come from ecclesia.
Well, without going deeper into the history of the word, why do you say this is a reason for going to church?
Okay, because the concept of being called is fundamental to Christianity. Mm-hmm. And that sense of calling really doesn't start with the believer. No matter how we want to look at free will, it doesn't start with the believer. It doesn't start with us at all, but it starts with God. And that means a sense of calling may be in the form of curiosity. It may be in a person's life just a seeking for truth. It might be a desire. They're in a season that they really are looking for healing, or a sense of not belonging and wanting to belong to true community.
Sure. All
of those kinds of things, or any other human need we might come up with. And God uses our human needs to call us to Him, even before we believe.
So you're saying a desire to seek out God is basically God calling us.
Yeah, Him calling us, not so much us calling Him, not
Right.
at first anyway.
Right.
And so it's in this calling, and if you have a call, even those of us who grew up with the old style telephone, we knew if it rang, someone called, there was someone behind the call.
Right.
And that's where we get into the reality of God in that.
So the church is only for those who are seekers in some way.
Essentially that's true, but being careful because not to trying to reduce God to a formula that this is the only way it works.
Right.
The way God calls people is as varied as life itself. So,
Right.
but that essentially is pretty much, I would say.
Well, if God is calling, it only makes sense
Mm-hmm.
to answer. Like you were
Yeah,
saying with the telephone.
ding-a-ling, hello.
Right. It's pretty straightforward. Go to church.
Right.
So how do you explain the second half of your answer? Never do that.
Right. Answer the call, but never do that. That's
Right.
answering with a riddle on a riddle. But it really comes down, the never do that comes down to, well, what kind of church are we talking about when we say go to church even as a non-believer? Because I'd ask the question, do all churches really fit the biblical paradigm?
Well, a couple of thoughts come to mind with that. First, as far as I know, the concept of church came from Christianity. Christianity comes from the Bible.
Right.
So if you're going to find a genuine church, the top priority needs to be a church that's biblically aligned.
Yeah. So, that's where we're going with this is if it's the real thing, if it's the real deal, which is out there, then great. But there is a whole lot of not so real deals for every real deal. So that's a problem.
Yes, it's a big problem. If a person's seeking, that means they're looking for something that they haven't found yet. I mean, that
Right.
makes sense.
And you know what, Kath? That's becoming more and more the case. There's more and more unchurched people. There are now, families out there where they haven't stepped inside a church for generations.
Right, right.
So that is true. So how would you word that as being the problem?
Well, so many people exploring the idea of God have little or no biblical knowledge nowadays,
Right.
and very likely no real experience with church, like you were saying. So how do they discern? I mean, how do you really discern the real and biblical from the not real if it's foreign to you?
Yeah, well, we can say this. We've started already. Is that, okay, let's make it a priority. Is that how the top priority becomes, if church is all about a biblical paradigm, how biblical is that church? There's your first priority.
Okay, well, even at that, there are some weak and even incorrect interpretations of Scripture. So how is a new seeker supposed to know?
Well, let's start with this.
I'm being the devil's advocate.
Devil's advocate, yes. As a matter of fact, that's as we talk about churches, there's even a satanic church, which that's quite a misnomer on where the word church comes from. But anyway, start with this, is an open mindset. At least start there. Right. If you're entertaining the idea that the biblical God, who is a God that calls, why not ask him then, if you're calling, to direct your steps, which is going to be, one, if he's not, you're in trouble anyway.
Right.
Because if there's the biblical God, and if he is real, then surely he can do real things like direct your steps.
Yeah, well, it makes very, very good sense. What else is involved in truly finding a biblical church?
Yeah, and finding, here's a rule of thumb that comes from my own little incidental experience, but I'm going to throw it in anyway, is count words.
Okay, you're going to have to explain.
Yes, yeah, that one probably explanations, and this is what I'm getting at, and it's very simple, and it's just a rule of thumb, but it's worth considering, especially if you listen to a wide variety of speakers, preachers, teachers, is how many times, if at all, they use the word Jesus or Christ.
That's a good point.
I have sat through a number of sermons where the name Jesus was never mentioned one time. So you end up with this wonderful, inspiring, motivational speech that's loosely based on biblical ideas. And if that's what you're after, well, good for you. But if you're looking for the biblical, it should be Jesus or Christ, and this is what he said.
Right. And I'll add to that, start reading Scripture for yourself, because even a version that's easy to follow, like the New English Translation or New International Version, start getting some impression for yourself.
Yeah.
And nothing really replaces that.
Right. It's not to be a theologian. I think both of us started out on paraphrased versions. For me, it was the Message way back in the day. I'm dating myself with that one.
Good News Bible.
The Good News. Yeah, there we go. We're the same time period.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave us an impression, at least if we went somewhere where we could say, that doesn't seem to line up. You're at least starting to develop a discernment.
Right.
So in that same way, a good church, the way it will open up the Bible, since we're talking Bible, so will a Bible study.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there are bad Bible studies as well, but there are good ones. And if God can direct your steps to a good church, surely He can direct you to a good Bible study as well.
That's right. And there's no substitute for human connection and being able to ask questions, and hear things explained that are on your heart. That's at the very heart of God's calling. So how about online? Does it offer help?
Yeah, and I know it's this pushback back and forth on this whole issue, but honestly, we live in a digital age. Everything is available online. Now, it can't make up for human connection, but it sure can give you information. There's a lot of potential out there. And of course, there's a lot of not so good stuff as well.
Right.
However, so we thought...
But it shouldn't keep you from searching out good stuff.
No. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, if somebody even happens to fall upon this study, is after years of using a lot of online sources, I thought, well, how about, as we're kind of wrapping this up, we just mention a few that have proven themselves trustworthy and are well worth, especially somebody beginning, to check them out.
Right.
And
Okay.
I'll get you to read them.
I will do that. When it comes to concise answers on all kinds of questions about Christianity, gotquestions.org is a great source. Their answers say a lot in a nice, concise, single page. When it comes to a quick overview and understanding of biblical stories, the Bible Project gives quick insight in a Toonly type format.
Yeah.
And you can find them easily at their website or on their YouTube channel.
Right.
When it comes to insight into the ancient culture of Bible times, William Barclay gives an educated, thoughtful picture in a verse-by-verse commentary. And if you don't have a Bible yet, try Blue Letter Bible, Bible Hub, or Bible Study Tools. They are reliable sources of many Bible translations, as well as a wide variety of study helps. And if you go to the transcript of this episode, there are links to all of these sources, and you can always find the transcripts at canancommunity.sermon.net. Scroll to episode word 22 titled, Should Non-Believers Go to Church?
Right, and we know that's a little bit involved with that instruction, because these transcripts show up automatically on our website, canancommunity.org. However, they change with every month. So if somebody happens to find this episode 3 months from now, they really need to go to sermon.net. So thanks for that. So I know we're not talking about every scenario. We really kind of honed in on the new seeker here. But this is a way for at least starting out in a healthy and productive way in your spiritual journey.
All right. So there it is, the how and why a person should go to church, even non-believers. Our featured song from the worship playlist this month is Ancient Words. So enjoy, be blessed, and we'll see you next month.
See you next month.
Bye.
Holy words, long preserved for our walk in this world, they resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Words of life, words of hope, give us strength, help us cope in this world wherever we roam. Ancient words will guide us home. Ancient words, ever true, changing me and changing you. to us through sacrifice. Oh, heed the faithful words of Christ. Holy words, long preserved for our walk in this world. They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Ancient words, ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Ancient words, ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Let the ancient words
You can watch Word for the Week at canancommunity.org. You can also catch our live stream on Canaan Community's Facebook, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app.